this is it. This is my hair for the summer. This is it. I've got a half wig. It's called the Dominican Curly by Outre. I've linked it on my TikTok shop. Literally just put my hair under a wig cap, pulled out some leave out, put some foam on there, made sure my hair was like blending in, moisturized. You can cut in some layers. You can part it in so many different ways. I'm obsessed with this. It's also giving Kelly Rowland. Ugh.
All right, girlies, I'm back. So you already know, Ultra, Ebony Line, period. One of the top, sellers. Because she's so curly. She definitely stretch. It's all the way to your back. This is one of my favorites. She is a Dominican curly piece, and it's a half wig. And you already know, I could take these scissors and chop her up into a bang if I want to. I could flip her to the other side. Whoop, whoop, whoop.
I felt like a Spanish, like a Puerto Rican in this hair. I felt Puerto Rican. Y'all know I love me some Puerto Rican. I felt Puerto Rican.
She's versatile.
I felt like a Spanish, like a Puerto Rican in this hair.
She's versatile.
I felt Puerto Rican. Y'all know I love me some Puerto Rican. I felt Puerto Rican.
She's versatile.
Puerto Rican in this. Rican. Ooh. Beady, beady.
Summertime fine.
I felt like a Spanish, like a Puerto Rican in this hair. I felt.
Hey y'all, look what I got today. Clock it.
Puerto Rican. Y'all know I love me some Puerto Rican. I felt like a Spanish, like a Puerto Rican in this hair. I felt Puerto Rican. Y'all know I love me some Puerto Rican.
Welcome back to the social climbing series. I never got a chance to make videos about all the specific types of exoticals, so we're going to start with this episode. There is an obsession with the Afro Latina exoticals in particular. So that's what I'm going to be talking about here. I'm also going to do a video on Creoles. I'll do one on probably like Horn Africans. But this one is going to focus on Afro Latinas. I think part of the hatred and jealousy and obsession with Afro Latinas is, number one, the hair texture. A lot of women in the Black community stereotype Latina exoticals as having this gorgeous hair. That's why a lot of them purchase Latina hairstyles such as Peruvian, that's very common, and then Brazilian. And then if you go on the hair websites, they even have like Dominican curly. That's a very popular hair texture. So I think that's a part of the obsession and a part of where the jealousy comes from if you are an exotical that has this Latina heritage. Number two, the triracial identity. Yes, I made up a word, triracial. I think a lot of people, they call a lot of exoticals biracial, when in reality, those women are actually triracial. I think that, you know how people try to erase your ancestry? People do the same thing to you if you're biracial. So you could have one parent who identifies as white and one parent who identifies as Black, but that doesn't mean that the white parent or the Black parent doesn't have some sort of admixture in there. So with a lot of exoticals who have this Latina ancestry, a lot of them are actually triracial. So they've got a mixture of Blackness, whiteness, and native, because people forget that there were natives in Puerto Rico, there were natives in Mexico. So there's kind of like this exoticism tied to being mixed. Sometimes people feel like the more things you're mixed with, the more quote unquote exotic you are, because you have several fluid identities. So you get to flow in and out of Blackness, you can flow in and out of European whiteness, you can flow in and out of being Hispanic. So I think that's another part of the obsession with Afro Latina exoticals as well. And throughout this video, I'm going to show different images of exoticals that have Latina ancestry. Number four, the fact that you are universally desirable. I've never in my life heard anybody say that they specifically don't date Latinas. I've never heard that. I feel like Latinas are one of the number one types of women of color that pretty much all races of men have talked about dating. And I think especially when it comes to the Black community, if you look at a lot of the people who claim that Black men hate Black women, well, a lot of those same men, they promote Latinas. They'll promote visiting these countries, the passport bros and all that shit, they're going to Latin American countries. So you're viewed as this woman where your country of origin is like a tourist destination. People feel like where you're from has the most beautiful women. I've heard a lot of people say, oh, well, Dominican women are the most beautiful, or Peruvian women are the most beautiful. Mexican women are so beautiful. So I think that there's kind of like this pedestal that people have for those of Latin descent. Number 5, if you're a Latina exotical, you can get away with having an attitude. You get away with being quote unquote spicy. They call it being spicy when in reality, you're just being a bitch. So yeah, you get to get away with that. You don't have to deal with the stereotype of being masculine. A lot of women in the monoracial Black community have this trauma of being told that they are masculine because of their attitudes. But if you see a Dominican woman or a Black Peruvian woman with the same type of attitude, cussing people out, fighting, throwing drinks, that same type of woman is not deemed as masculine because she is still culturally different. So some people are in love with Latin culture. There are some people who they kind of idolize Latin culture, or maybe they have a certain country that they've always idolized. And let's be honest, a lot of people in the United States are too poor to have traveled to a lot of Latin American countries. So I think that's another reason why if you're a Latina exotical, you are exoticized, because there are a lot of people where they've never been to Honduras, they've never been to Panama, they've never been to Colombia. And so if you tell them, oh yeah, like, my mom's Black, my dad's Nicaraguan, they've never been to Nicaragua, so they view your family of origin as kind of like this exotic place. Number 6, Latin culture influences American culture a lot. Latin American food is extremely popular here in the United States. Obviously, everybody loves fucking tacos and shit. That's a huge part of the melting pot in America. So I think that's another example of kind of like a positive stereotype about Latinas, because sometimes people will be like, oh, that's interesting that she's Latina because, maybe she can make me some of the food. And another thing too is there's this stereotype that you are bilingual or that you're multilingual. Spanish is one of the most popular languages that people in the United States are trying to learn. That's one of the most popular languages. So even if you were not raised speaking Spanish, if you are a Latina, you naturally have more motivation to learn Spanish because you have actual family members from those countries. You have more motivation to go to those countries because your family history is from there. And so a lot of people admire a woman who's bilingual or a woman who wants to be bilingual. That is something else that makes you more interesting. Number 6, Latin American music. There are a lot of music icons who are of Latin descent. And I also think that you don't get as much of a ratchet stereotype if you're an Afro Latina exotical, because Afro Latinas are not known to specifically listen to trap music 24/7. That's not a stereotype of Afro Latinas. That's more of a stereotype of monoracial, monocultural Black women. So you're not facing the same stereotypes. And by the way, there are actual forums online where you will see women admitting that they are jealous of Latina women. I actually just came across this on Lipstick Alley. Let me pull it up really quick on the screen. It says, I'm jealous of Latina women. I like the whole Latina aesthetic. They makeup, hair, beauty, culture, Spanish language. So if you are a Latina exotical, that's one of the jealousy triggers. That's one of the jealousy triggers. You can't tell me that nobody's ever been jealous of someone who happens to be of Spanish descent. And I've noticed that they try to gaslight you. If you're a Latina exotical, they try to say, you're not Latina enough because you're too Black. They try to say you're too Black to be Latina. But then if you go into the Black community, then they'll say, oh, well, you're not Black. Kind of like what they do to Cardi B. So that's just a humbling tactic that people use against Afro Latinas. They want you to feel the same isolation that they feel. They try to convince you that you're at the bottom of the Latina community. And it's like, why is it that non-Latinas are speaking on Latinas? Isn't that interesting? You've got non-Hispanic women speaking on the Hispanic community. You've got non-Hispanic women trying to create a Hispanic hierarchy so they can put black women at the bottom of the Hispanic hierarchy. Isn't that interesting? That's a humbling tactic. Because all you have to do is go on TikTok right now and you'll see somebody putting on a lace wig. You'll see an unambiguous woman putting on a lace front wig, and then she'll start dancing and twerking, talking about how she looks like a Puerto Rican now because, she's got her lace front on. But another advantage you have if you're a Latina exotical, for example, you could talk about your heritage with Hispanic people. Also, you can learn Spanish. A lot of women who talk about how they're colorist and shit, like in Miami, they talk so much shit about Miami. They talk so much shit about like LA. I'll talk about Miami right now. Miami has a lot of Hispanics. So the population of the United States, the Hispanic population is increasing just in general. So your community as a Latina exotical, your Latin community is literally becoming bigger and stronger and more popular. They're becoming more of a popular beauty standard. The political voice of people in Latin America is becoming stronger. I mean, there's so much happening right now in the United States. But I just think that Latinos have such a beautiful culture. They have such a rich history. And I think that that's something that a lot of people envy, because if you think about self-hating people in the black community, think about all the things that people hate about their own black heritage. They hate the fact that there was like slavery. They don't know that much about the positive aspects of their African heritage. So you, having a Latina mix in there, you have access to a culture where maybe you don't experience as much self-hate. I would say that's one of the advantages of being multiracial. You flow in and out of each race. I don't really know how to describe it, but it's almost like some days you feel more black, some days you feel more white, some days you feel more Latina. If you're a mixed race, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So the traumas from your blackness, the traumas are not as bad because you're not going through several isms simultaneously. And also, a lot of people think that if you didn't grow up speaking Spanish, then somehow you're not Latina, or if you weren't born in that country, then you don't count. The only people that think that are ignorant people who are not a part of the Hispanic community, because anybody who is Hispanic knows that Hispanics are not a monolith. And I've seen this trend where a lot of people, they try to gaslight Afro Latina exoticals. They try to gaslight them for learning Spanish on Duolingo or for just not being fluent in Spanish. And it's like, how are you going to diss somebody for wanting to learn? Do you hear how ignorant that sounds? Why would I make fun of someone because they're doing everything in their power to learn a new language? They're making fun of you because you don't have any Spanish-speaking family members. Do you hear how stupid that sounds? Where does that place you on the scale? If you're an unambiguous black woman and you're making fun of somebody because they're learning Spanish on an app, where does that place you as somebody who can't speak Spanish? So that's one of the humbling tactics they'll give towards Afro-Latinas in particular. But I think that there are a lot of positive stereotypes about Latinas. For example, having the curves and everything. Even like the hairstyles. I think of long, straight, silky black hair in particular. And I feel like that's always been a beauty standard in the black community, this long, straight black hair. That has always been a beauty standard in the African American community. So if you were born knowing how to silk press, I just feel like Latinas are very good. They're very well known for being good at silk presses. A lot of people in the black community use hot combs. You know, the combs where you put it on the stove and then you just fry your hair. But in the Afro-Latina communities, they're not known for putting a big ass comb on the stove and then ripping out their edges. They're very good at doing the silk presses. They are. They're good at doing silk presses. A lot of them are good at maintaining their silk presses and stuff. So that's another like beauty advantage. I would call that kind of a cultural beauty secret. Every culture has its own beauty secrets. Every culture has pros and cons. So if you're a Latina, guess what? There are advantages to that. And I think sometimes people will try to be like, oh, well, you're not the standard for Latinas, and you're not the standard for Black beauty. You don't have to be a standard in order to be included. So that's another gaslighting, humbling tactic. And by the way, in terms of hair, the body wave hairstyle, that is one of the most popular. That is probably the number one or number two most popular Black female weave and wig hairstyle. That is a Peruvian hair texture a lot of times. And if you don't believe me, I have the screenshots pulled up. So do you guys remember when there was a hair salon that opened, or it was a beauty supply store that opened recently, and the guy was giving out free bundles? And the women were standing in line, they were camping overnight, all so they can have access to these bundles. Well, guess what? Majority of bundles that are very popular are Peruvian. Okay, so if you're an Afro-Peruvian exotical, if you are Afro-Brazilian, if you're Dominican, you're Puerto Rican, I've noticed that Dominican curly, that's one of the most common synthetic, that's one of the most popular curly synthetic hair types. It's the Dominican curly, or Dominican waves. If you look online right now, go on Amazon, go on any of those wig websites, and you will see that majority of the curls, they're called Dominican. How many hair textures are called African American? How many are called Nigerian? Nigerian curls, Ghanaian curls, Ghanaian afro. No, that's not a thing. So I feel like the hair texture, or like just being stereotyped as having family members with that hair texture, that's one of the main stereotypes that people give Afro Latinas. That's one of the biggest, I would say that's one of the biggest pedestals that people give to Latina exoticals, is that they either have a quote unquote good hair texture, or they are directly related to people with a quote unquote good hair texture. And so that's why you see people fetishizing them, saying that they want to have babies. That's another thing. A lot of men want to have babies with you. Well, that's true just if you're an exotical in general. But I feel like a lot of people, they want their children to look like you. Comment down below if you're an exotical and you've ever had people admit that they want their children to look like you. But what do you ladies think? Let me know in the comment section, and I'll talk to you next time. Stay pretty, ladies.